we're back, man. We are back. What's up, man?
We're back. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, man. Dude, welcome to the Split Decision Podcast. What is this, episode 4 now?
Yep.
Episode 4.
Numero 4.
I am Alyas Blanco, the Split Decision. I'm here with my boy Nate Marrero. Nate, how are you doing, dude?
I'm doing well, man. I've recovered from our last episode. I've finally gone over, what happened, and I'm ready to preview this card this Saturday.
Yeah, and this card right here, we've kind of had, like, the past 3 weeks, we've kind of had, like, not thin cards, but nothing that was, like, very big besides the
Yeah.
Inouye thing. But the Inouye one
hmm
happened on a Tuesday. This one's
Yeah.
happening this weekend,
Yeah.
and
Tuesday
no
at the
other
crack of dawn.
Tuesday at the crack of dawn over in Japan. But this was Saturday. It's happening prime time,
hmm
9 p.m., 10 p.m. Obviously, we're talking about Canelo Alvarez versus Edgar Berlanga. We are going to be previewing this pretty much this entire card that's been announced. And honestly, again, Canelo Alvarez fighting on Mexican Independence Day weekend. He's fighting undefeated Edgar Berlanga. And this is going to be for the unified WBC, WBO, WBA, and Ring Magazine super middleweight titles. He is no longer undisputed. He's now a unified champion, which it's been a long time in the making, but that's
Yeah.
besides the point. This fight, about 4 years ago, people were looking to make this fight. 4 years later, a lot of people don't want this fight anymore. There's a little
Yeah.
bit of different narrative, especially with both the fighters' last few runs. Nate, give me your assessment of this fight before we get into kind of a breakdown.
Yeah. It's kind of like, with how Berlanga's looked of late, it's like, he's definitely lost his steam. Like, as a prospect, when he started off, he was like 16-0 with 16 knockouts, first
16
round
first
knockouts
round.
too. Like, freaking the hype couldn't have gone any higher. But since he's like taken these steps up in competition, he's kind of like plateaued. He's kind of stayed at that level. He's struggling against guys that if you're going to take that next step, you shouldn't be struggling against. So it's kind of like, all right. And like, what has he done to deserve this fight? I don't know. It's just and for Canelo, it's just kind of like he's like taking this path where he's like fighting guys that are like decent names, but like don't really like no one was picking Munguia to beat him, no one was picking Charlo to beat him, no one was picking Triple G to beat him. But those are the guys he's decided to I guess set his sights on. So it's kind of disappointing, especially for an undisputed champ with a couple viable contenders. So I'll be watching. Canelo's great, he's future Hall of Famer and he's the biggest name in boxing. But I'd be lying if I said I'm like super pumped about this fight.
Yeah, no, I'm not excited about this fight, but we all know that we're most likely going to watch this just
Yeah.
because Canelo Alvarez is still the undisputed face of boxing. He has the most pull, he has the most draw. No matter what the numbers say, Canelo Alvarez is the most influential today in
hmm
boxing. Um, Edgar Berlanga, you've said it already, a highly touted prospect, coming out, 16 first round knockouts, and then, step up in competition. You're expected to see growing pains, but I think
Yeah.
over these last 4 years, I haven't seen a real improvement in his game. I started to see a little bit of improvement in his last fight against Predrag McCrory, but then again,
That's
he kind of
like we didn't even hear of that guy until Berlanga
exactly.
fought him.
But the thing is, I think at a point the competition was still not world level.
hmm
So like he looked good, but it wasn't against a guy who was world level. And that's kind of been the big thing about Edgar Berlanga is that, he's getting this big high profile fight, but he's kind of been fighting around C minus level fighters,
Yeah.
and you know, his next fight now he's taking on the guy at 168, and that big step up could cost him, or it could be something where he might shock the world. I don't know, but knowing Canelo, I call him now Canelo the businessman.
hmm
He picks fights that are heavily in his favor, whether it's for name value, whether it's just winnable fights, he knows what he's doing at this point in his career. Ever since 2022, he's very particular in who he's fighting and what dates he's fighting at. So Nate, before we get into a whole narrative, let's take a tail of the tape of the card of the main event, which is Canelo Alvarez versus Edgar Berlanga. So we're talking about the main event here. Obviously, Canelo Alvarez, unified super middleweight champion. He last beat Jaime Munguia back in Cinco de Mayo weekend by unanimous decision. An impressive performance. I think it was a very entertaining fight for what
Yeah.
we got. Even though, a lot of people were touting for another opponent that we're not going to talk about because we can go on a tangent about that.
Yeah,
But
we could spend an hour talking about that.
exactly. But it was an impressive win against Jaime Munguia because the fight
Yeah.
was a very good inside fight. And, Munguia was in there for like
Hmm.
the first 5 rounds. But you could tell Canelo, once Canelo felt the power, once Canelo can really withstand Jaime Munguia's punches, he really put on the onslaught. And I think,
Hmm.
if you're gonna fight Canelo Alvarez, maybe the inside game is not the best idea for you.
Yeah.
And for Edgar Berlanga, I mentioned it already. His last fight was back in February of this year. He stopped Pedro McCrory, I think, in the sixth round.
6th round. Hmm.
He stopped him in the 6th round. That was his second fight with Matchroom Boxing. This fight right here, 12 rounds, unified super middleweight titles. Nate, I'm gonna give it to you. Give me a little bit of a breakdown of this fight.
Well, I mean, with Canelo, usually like when he's at his best, he's closing the gap. He's in range. He's good. He can really dig the body. He's got good uppercuts. He's a really good counter puncher too. It's like he kind of like he presses forwards where like you kind of have to let your hands go, and then he counters you and can really make you pay. And for Berlanga, obviously he's got his powers. Ever since he's like taken a step up in competition, he likes to pick his shots. But it's just tough to do that against someone like Canelo. With Canelo, like when you look at Triple G, like Dimitri Bivol, they kind of overwhelmed him with like they had a good stiff jab and like good volume. And like that's not really like I don't know if Berlanga is going to be able to do that. On top of that, like Triple G and Bivol's boxing acumen was like, like some of the best in the sport, and that's why they're able to give Canelo the trouble that they gave him. Um, so that's like kind of how I view it. I imagine Canelo's probably gonna be the same. Probably gonna walk in the range and wait for Berlanga to let his hands go and just make him pay, dig the body, and I think at some point Berlanga is gonna break. That's how I think it's gonna go.
Yeah, I kind of agree with your point. I think that for the past 2 years, I think Canelo's had a formula of how he's been fighting and how to win fights. Kind of
Hmm.
just stalking his opponent, walking them down, and kind of being very selective of his
Yeah,
shots. Punishing the body, obviously. I think punishing the body has kind of been his main thing lately. But being very selective. It wasn't until Jaime Munguia who was trying to push the pace where you saw a little bit of a higher paced Canelo. But at the same time, Canelo still sticks to his same game plan. Close
yeah,
the gap, get on the inside, and kind of he already knows how he already knows that he can out toughen a fighter when it
yeah.
comes
He's
to
got a phenomenal chin too.
phenomenal chin, phenomenal punch resistance. So he knows he's going to be able to out tough you on the inside. The only thing is that Edgar Berlanga has the same exact game plan now. For the past like few fights, especially since he's been with Matchroom, he's been fighting a slower, methodical pace where he's trying to be more of a counter puncher, while also be very selective with his shots. Berlanga has some heavy hands, but he is now taking a similar approach to Canelo, where he is kind of stalking his opponents and kind of not punish the body, but he is trying to punish the head.
Hmm.
The only thing is you're trying to do. He's going to try to do that game plan against a guy who's probably the best in the game at stalking his opponents. So
Yeah,
I don't know how well that strategy will work, and I don't know how well being aggressive is going to work for him, just because he is not the sharpest fighter in the division.
yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
Hmm.
But what do you think is Edgar Berlanga's keys to victory if he wants to shock the world?
I think he's gonna have to use his size and reach. He's a much bigger guy. I mean, most guys at 168 pounds are, but I think he's like really gonna have to pump the jab and just kind of stay at that main range or keep that like that kind of like middle to like outside range. Like try to get Canelo to like close the gap and then make him counter. Make him pay for trying to get over aggressive. But it's just so hard to get Canelo flustered, to get him to. And I don't know if like Berlanga has that kind of skill. Like he's gonna have to do some stuff we haven't seen from him before. And like banking on someone to do that is tough. Like he hasn't done that against this level of opponent, no less. So I mean, he's gonna have to outbox him, use a stiff jab, and hope that Canelo kind of like lets his emotions get the best of him because like it's pretty clear that Canelo's not doesn't really like him. They were going back and forth at the press conference. I think Canelo's gonna want to knock him out. He hasn't knocked anyone out since he knocked out Caleb Plant to win all the belts. So I think he'll probably want to prove a point, and he's gonna have to like bank on that and like take advantage of that. Is what I think.
Yeah, Nate, I'm gonna have to disagree with you here because you
Okay.
said out. You said he's gonna have to outbox
Wait.
Canelo. But let's just. That's what you said. And I'm going to disagree with you because he has to play to his strengths. His strength
Yeah.
is not pure boxing. His strength is not sharp techniques. His strength is his power and his aggression. So he's gonna have to be kind of overly aggressive in this one.
Hmm.
Kind of make Canelo think. He's gonna have to make Canelo like he's gonna have to be busy. He is gonna have to be busy working on the inside. Maybe even push Canelo around. Like you said, use his physical strength. He's gonna have to be pushing Canelo around for a little bit, just because you don't want to try to get into a chess match with someone who is underrated in terms of their skill and who is a lot sharper, a lot quicker countering, and someone that can make you pay in an instant. That's what Canelo can do. Canelo is a very good counterpuncher, and Canelo is very, I would say, he has better defense. He definitely has better
Oh
defense
yeah,
than
for sure.
Edgar Berlanga. So giving him time to think about his next move, it's not the right thing. I think trying to outbox him is not the right move because Edgar Berlanga is not a pure boxer at heart. Man's a
Yeah.
brawler. Man's a headhunter. Use that to your advantage. You know what I mean? You might not have the cardio to go 12 rounds with it, but you need to put yourself in the best position to win. And the best position for him to win is to come out and push the pace, push him on the inside, and bully the bully. That's really what you have to do. You have to bully the bully. You're bigger, you have heavy hands, and you can really do some damage in those early rounds to where Canelo might be a bit fatigued when it comes to, round 6 and 7. And maybe you'll have a chance to, kind of find an opening. But he needs to be able to have Canelo respect his power at the beginning of the fight because if not, it's going to be a long night for him.
Yeah.
So, that being said, what does Canelo have to do? I mean, it's pretty obvious. We're talking about Edgar Berlanga like this is a real big mismatch, but let's kind of break down or kind of detail what Canelo has to do in order to get this win.
I think it's just more of the same. Just kind of cut off the ring, try to push Berlanga back, and just make him like walk into traps. It's like something if he lets his hands go. Canelo's like one of the best counter punchers in the game, so I think that's going to be very important. Make him pay, and that'll lead to more openings. I think digging the body too, because I mean he's a much bigger guy, and I'll just help slow him down. I'll help soften him up later in the fight. So I think digging the body and effective counterpunching, which is really like the hallmarks of Canelo's game. I think just sticking to what's gotten him to this point should be able to, pave the way for him against Berlanga.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I definitely think too. I think a big thing you got to make Berlanga move. You have to
Yeah.
make him move backwards, make him move around the wing because Edgar Berlanga, if you haven't seen his feet, they're not the best. He
Yeah.
doesn't have the best footwork. So imagine forcing him to move around the ring and kind of create some distance. It's going to be very hard and it's going to drain so much energy out of Edgar Berlanga that it's going to be easier for Canelo to pick him apart, especially towards the middle rounds. And hopefully, Canelo can find an opening once that happens because sooner or later, his feet are going to feel like quicksand, and he's not going to be able to move as much as he's moving. So
Mhm.
that's kind of my biggest thing. You're going to have to make him move. Try to make him feel uncomfortable. Because once Edgar Berlanga starts moving around the ring, once he starts trying to create some distance, that's how Canelo knows that this fight is borderline over. Because you
Yeah.
created fear in him. You created fear in him, and you made him respect your power without even throwing anything. So that's my biggest thing. But we broke it down. But now the biggest thing, we have to talk about our predictions. Who is going to win, Nate? Who's going to win this main event? I mean, if it's not obvious right now, you say it right
Yeah.
now.
Neither of us have. I don't think either of us really
Let's just
like
okay. Ready?
Berlanga's chances.
Three,
Three,
two,
two,
one.
one. Canelo eighth round
Canelo.
stop.
Eighth round
Yeah,
stoppage. Oh my
I think
gosh.
he stops
Okay.
him in the eighth.
Eighth.
Yeah,
Okay.
if it gets that long.
I say okay. I would say we were talking about it, and I was gonna say 12th round, but I keep replaying Edgar Berlanga fights in my head right now, and I'm just like, man, I don't know if just hit not only his style but just his resistance and his toughness is going to withstand a 12 round world title
Yeah.
fight against the best. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have my doubts he'll be able to go 12 rounds. I mean, it's really
I
gonna come down to like,
I
does
will go.
Canelo carry him? Like, does he
Yeah.
want to like
I will
coast? Or
go. You went eighth. I'll go 6th round stoppage. We'll go 6th round
yeah, I can
stoppage.
see that. I think it's gonna be around like those like middle to late rounds.
Yeah.
That's when he
So
gets him out of there.
I don't think it would be like a 10th through 12th stoppage. I mean, I would be surprised because
Yeah,
Edgar Berlanga is going to have to use up a whole bunch of more energy that he's not used to using, not only like physically but mentally, to
yeah,
get to those rounds. And I just
yeah,
don't think he would be able to because it's going to be so not only the pressure, but just the work rate that you're just going to have to exert
yeah,
fighting in the main event of the biggest,
yeah.
pretty much the biggest
It's
fight of
gonna
your
be
life.
it's like gonna be a hostile environment. Mexican Independence Day weekend. You know, Mexico
Oh
versus
my
Puerto
gosh,
Rico. It's gonna be.
the
I
rivalry is
mean,
real.
it's gonna be one of the biggest. If Berlanga were to somehow like pull this off, I mean, it's one of the bigger upsets in boxing. You know, like
Yeah,
I don't like. I struggle to see a path to victory for him. You know,
yeah.
it's gonna
So I
take
did.
a.
So we
It's
definitely
gonna be
think Canelo is going to make another defense of his unified titles. No longer undisputed, like I said, unified
yeah.
titles.
It doesn't have the
So
IBF belt anymore.
yeah, shout out William Skull. But
Oh my god.
we go from the
Uh,
main event to the co-main event because Mr. Arislandi Lara, bro, Arislandi Lara is defending his WBA middleweight title against Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia making his debut at middleweight, kinda, because supposedly middleweight is 160.
yeah,
But
last
for
I've
some
heard, yeah.
reason, last time I heard, middleweight was at 160. But this fight is being fought at a catch weight of 157 pounds. First off, why is a world title fight being fought at a catch weight?
Uh, your guess is as good as mine, buddy. I have no clue. I mean,
I
if you're
can't
fighting for a belt, it should be at the weight class. Like
I can't
that's not. I
speculate
mean, granted,
anything.
Canelo did at 155 pounds for a while, but
I've never seen a B-side fighter get so much contractual control. I'm gonna tell you that
B-side
right now.
fighter that hasn't fought in 2 years.
That's what I'm saying. So let's go to the tail of the tape because you just took that point, but it's okay.
My bad.
It's okay. It's okay. Danny Garcia is making his fighting for the first time in over 2 years. He last beat Jose Benavidez Jr. by unanimous
Decision.
decision. Yeah, and that was at 154. So he's jumping up in weight. Technically, he's jumping up in weight. And Arislandi Lara last fought in March. I think this was the day before Easter. He knocked out Michael Zarafa in the second round with a beautiful counter punch. Oh my goodness, that was nice. And this fight right here, I'm actually really excited about this fight. I think that you know Lara and Danny Garcia are the two biggest names at middleweight right now in terms of name value. I'm not
Yeah,
talking about momentum. I'm not talking about, their resumes right now, but in terms of household names, they're the two biggest. So I'm already excited about in that case. But Erislandy Lara, ever since he's hit father time age, which is like his late 30s, early 40s, this man has literally changed up his style. Kinda. He's still a great
Yeah.
defensive fighter,
Mhm.
a smart defensive fighter. But now you see him sitting down on his punches more, and he's now become a real prevalent finisher. And
Mhm.
Danny Garcia, we know one of the, you know, back in his day, one of the best body punchers in his division, hands down. He's one of the he was one of the best body punchers, and he always puts on an exciting show. Nate, give me your thoughts on this fight.
I think just name value wise, it's a good fight. I'm kind of worried just like stylistically. You're talking about like two natural, like two guys who are more so they want to like counter you and like make you pay. Like you look at some of Danny Garcia's biggest knockouts, is it's catching you with a big left hook or a big right hand off of mistake. And Lara is like more of a defensive fighter, more of a counter. Although he's pressed action much more of late. So I mean, we'll see. There's so many question marks going into this fight. Lara's
That's why it's
age
so exciting.
and
That
like
is why it's so
yeah,
exciting.
it can either be really good or it can be really bad. I don't know what it's gonna be, but I mean that's part of the intrigue. I mean, Danny Garcia hasn't fought in 2 years, so yeah, there's a lot of question marks between two of the guys are more of the prevalent. They've always been around the title hunt. Of late, Lara does have a belt, so we'll see how it shakes out. It's a very interesting fight. There's a lot of question marks for me.
Yeah, man. And listen, Danny Garcia is no spring chicken himself. The man's 36 years old, and
Yeah.
he's been fairly inactive. I mean,
Hmm.
the last fight before his fight with Jose Benavidez was against Errol Spence Jr., and that was in
Right.
2020. So there's been 2 year gaps in between his last two fights. It's crazy. It's insane
Yeah,
to me.
that's and I know he's getting a title shot off of this at middleweight. So
Hey, man, but
that's
listen,
that's boxing for you, I
it's
guess.
boxing, but honestly, if we're being honest, if Danny Garcia were to win this fight, he would be the biggest name at middleweight.
He would
Like
be. He
he would
would
be
be.
the biggest name. And I'm not saying I want him to win, but if he were to become world champion, that that division would need some name value, and he would bring that. He would
Yeah.
bring that.
I don't know
He's
if he's gonna defend his belt against any of those guys though, or try to unify.
didn't even say that. I just said he would bring some attention to it.
Yeah.
I didn't say he would defend. I just said attention. That being said, let me talk. I'll break down the fight real quick, and then I'll toss it to you. So again, we talked about it. I've talked about it. Erislandy Lara has been, on this career, not career resurgence, but like a career transition, becoming more of a fan favorite fighter, kind of transitioning into that modern Cuban style we've been
Mhm.
talking about with David Morrell and Oslis Iglesias. Erislandy Lara kind of pioneered that, and I think he did that more because of his age. He realized his physical attributes are deteriorating, but he understands that power is the last thing to go, and he
Mhm.
always and intangibles are forever. So
Yeah.
he's starting to understand that taking a defensive stance, kind of being deceivingly defensive and kind of methodical, but also counterpunching is his best formula. And I
Mhm.
think that, the run that he's on puts him in a good place ahead of this fight against Danny Garcia. Granted, being at 157 pounds, that 3 pound weight cut, especially in your early 40s, could make a huge difference. I'll
Mhm.
just say that right now. But again, we already know what comes with Erislandy Lara. Smart, high IQ. Defensive timing is unmatched, world level feat, and you know Mike Tyson at this point, the way he's punching, freaking Mike Tyson at this point.
I don't
But
know.
the thing is, we talk about him, but Danny Garcia. One thing that I am worried about with Lara, because I talked about the physical attributes kind of deteriorating, timing kind of starting to slow down. Danny Garcia's timing's on par with some of the best.
Yeah.
And for a guy who, was short, I believe was shorter in his division, man has a long reach. And with that long reach, he really throws punches at weird angles. It kind of,
Yeah. Or
especially if
looping
he's
shots.
looping shots, and especially in the phone booth, those looping shots are the ones that he really takes like advantage of, and that really set up the finish, in his fights. He mixes up arm and hip punches really well, and
Mhm.
that's something that is really hard because you're either predominantly punching from the hips or you're punching from the arms. It's never you never really a lot of fighters don't really mix it up really well at the elite level. And then obviously his hand speed, like we already know how fast he is, and we already know how well he counters to the body.
Mhm.
One thing I know you said that they're both counter punchers, and I agree with you too. I think that they're looking for that opportunity to expose you.
Yeah.
But the one thing I think that will give Lara the edge is the fact that Danny Garcia likes to fight in front of you. You
Mhm.
know, whereas Lara can move. Lara will be able to cut angles. He will be able to kind of give you different looks. Whereas Danny Garcia is front and center at you at all times.
Yeah.
Danny Garcia likes even if he's counterpunching, he's going to be front and center squared up on you.
Mhm.
And that could give Lara the advantage. Nate, what did you see in this fight? And where do you see the advantage going to?
Well, I think the 3 pound weight cut is something I like, especially if Lara has a tough time. Like that could be like if I'm Garcia, like I'm trying to push the pace a little bit, not like like some pressure fighter, but something where make Lara work and dig the body too. Especially when someone's had a tough weight cut, they're way more susceptible to the body. And for Lara, I'm trying to not like completely be on the move, but keep him turning, keep on giving angles. Like Garcia's a little slow footed. So I would think, just try to keep him turning. Don't let him get set. But it's also, I mean, at his age, and who knows how he handles the weight cut. That's going to be very interesting to see how his body handles that. And if he still has one more good fight left in him, I think he's going to have to be, he's going to have to be the best version of himself against Danny Garcia. I mean, they're both going to have to be, and there's just we'll see how it shakes out.
Yes. So that brings me to my next question. Who do you think is going to win this fight? Just want the name. Just want the name. Ready? Three, two, one. Mar-
Here's Landy Lara.
I was gonna say Danny Garcia.
Oh, okay. We
I say
disagree.
Danny Garcia. I say Danny Garcia
Okay.
just because the weight cut. I only say that
Yeah.
because of the weight cut. That's my biggest thing. It's not. It's because I think when it comes to skill, in terms of skill, they're neck and neck. I
Mhm.
mean, when
I would
it
give
when
Lara the edge
uh
in terms of pure
yeah,
skill.
in terms of pure skill, yes, but when you bring into fact age as well,
Mhm.
I would say they're a lot closer. I mean,
Yeah, that's fair.
I would give Lar the edge, but like I'd say they're a lot closer. They're neck
Yeah.
and neck. But I think too is just I think that weight cut is going to make a huge difference. I think you'll
Yeah.
see a slower version of Erislandy Lara. And granted, knock on wood, I've Danny Garcia is tough. Punch
Mhm.
resistance punch resistance is
Yeah. I've
really,
rarely
really
seen
good
him
too.
rocked.
Rarely
Like,
see
really,
him
like, the
rock.
Thurman fight, that was the only time he seemed like he was buzzed.
And even then, that fight was still close.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Good.
I would give Danny Garcia, especially if he's able to, punish the body. If he's
Mhm.
able to punish the body and get off fast, get off fast. That's the biggest thing. He has to get off first
Yeah.
because if he gives Arizlan Lara time, that's when you're going to start seeing problems, and that's where the fight is going to start separating, especially as we get into rounds 4 and 5. Because when we get into those middle rounds, Erislandy Lara just knows what to do and he will start getting into a groove.
Yeah.
It never ceases to amaze me. He gets in the groove in the middle of the fight and then he just never takes the he never takes the gas pedal off. So we disagreed on this. I mean, give me a reason why you picked Erislandy Lara in this fight.
I think I'm really concerned about Garcia's activity or lack of activity. He's had huge lapses in between, huge gaps in between his last couple of fights. I think that could be something where if he gets off to a slow start, if it takes him a while to get going, I think like Lara can pocket the early, can take the early rounds, and then from there he'll know how to like navigate the end of the fight, even if he's getting a little tired. So I think it's something where just Garcia's activity scares me. I mean, I can easily see Garcia winning, but I think Lara's activity and his boxing acumen will be enough to get him by.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, we'll talk about activity for a second. Danny Garcia hasn't fought in over 2 years. Erislandy Lara's last fight was 6 months ago.
Yeah, he's
So
active.
active. And at 41 years old, he's going to have to be active if he wants to be fresh.
Mm-hmm.
We go from the co-main event to a feature bout that I'm very, very excited about. I'm talking about Caleb Plant versus Trevor McCumbee. And boy, look at that hat right there. Look at that
Wow,
hat right
I
there.
can't recall ever seeing that at a freaking stare down.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Okay, we're not
But
gonna get into
listen,
that. Back to boxing.
tail of the tape. All right. Caleb Plant is fighting for the first time since losing to David Benavidez last year. A fight where it was very competitive,
Yeah.
but he was decisively beaten. That
Hmm.
being said, Caleb Plant's stock has never been bigger, I think.
Yeah.
Even in those losses, he's shown that he is the real deal contender, someone who's
Hmm.
not afraid to fight anybody. This fight is for the WBA interim super middleweight title. We're just throwing out titles.
Golly. All right.
You know, this is a title that David Morrell held, by the way. This is a title that David Morrell held. So the interim WBA title. Trevor McCumbee is on a 3-fight win streak. The man actually took a hiatus back in 2018, came back and won 3 in a row in the past couple years. So he took a hiatus in 2018. Now he's won 3 in a row. Nate, I'm gonna let you break this down because you know I don't know much about Trevor McCumbee. I know a lot about
Y-
Caleb Plant, but I'm gonna let you break this one down.
Yeah, he likes to. I mean, he really likes to bring the pressure. Very relentless. Tries to cut off the ring, get you on the ropes, and whether or not that's gonna work against Caleb Plant, I have no clue. Because I mean, he can something where he's gonna walk into counter punches, or who knows if Plant decides if he can take his power, he decides to stand his ground. Plant has sneaky power. I think you look at his knockout of Anthony Durrell. I mean, that was devastating. Like knockout of the year candidate. He's got a really good left hook. Um, so yeah, I just think it's something where he's Trevor McCumbie's gonna try to do what he always does, try to pressure you, get you along the ropes. But this is a completely different animal compared to what McCumbie has fought throughout his career. So I think Plant gets him out of there. If yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the saying that a lot of people say there's levels to this game.
yeah,
Trevor McCumbee primarily fighting at regional or club level is making a big step up, fighting arguably
huge step up.
a huge step up, fighting arguably the second best 168 pounder in the world. And I don't want to say, I don't want to count him out, but there's just certain things that you don't know until you
Yeah,
actually get into the ring and find out firsthand. And I think he's going to realize that when he gets in the ring with Caleb Plant, because in those fights, in that fight, he's going to realize he's fighting a guy who just has some
hmm,
veteran ring generalship, and I think that's going to take over instantly. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I think Caleb Plant is going to control the ring, and once he does that, the fight is his to lose.
hmm,
Caleb Plant, obviously a very good range fighter, someone who has a long jab, someone who can
turn you.
fight, turn you, fight slick, make you real frustrated. But Caleb Plant also, you said it, sneaky power, a sneaky counterpuncher too. One of the
Yeah,
quicker counterpunchers at 168. You know what I mean?
hmm,
Because we talk about his power, but it was really his speed and how he torqued his hook that got that
yeah,
knockout. Because it was something Durrell didn't see it coming, like not
yeah,
one bit.
hmm,
He threw his hook, and it was just a split second slower than Caleb Plant's.
yeah,
So I think again, this is going to be a fight where you know Trevor McCumbee is going to be fighting an uphill battle from the jump, and he's going to have to prove people wrong. I mean, granted, 28 and 0, 21 knockouts. Dude has some hands on him,
yeah,
but when you're talking about a former world champion, you're gonna have to put together the best game plan possible because again, you go from regional to national level. You're fighting on national TV now, and those lights will
Very bright.
affect you. Very
Very
bright.
bright.
Like when people say like the bright like don't shine in the bright lights like those like they really mean that the spotlight really gets to people. So we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna say it real quick. What are your predictions for this fight?
I think Caleb Plant gets him out of there in the middle to late rounds. Also, wouldn't be surprised if it ends with a cut. 'Cause they were supposed to fight in August, and then McCombie had to pull out because of a cut over his left eye. So if that hasn't been fully healed, and he starts to eat a few jabs, I wouldn't be surprised if that's how it goes. But I think Plant stops him one way or another.
Yeah, fun fact, that fight was supposed to be in Orlando, Florida. Me and
It
Nate
was.
were supposed to go to that. But it is what it is. We're gonna get it this Saturday. I'm excited for it. I'm gonna go with Caleb Plant. I'm gonna go with fourth round stoppage. I
Oh
think
wow.
he's just gonna be too much. I think
Yeah, I
he's
would be.
gonna outbox him too much. I think it's just the pressure is gonna be so much from McCombie that either he's gonna get stopped or his corner is going to stop it after round four. That's what I think. Plant, I think, granted, with the losses, I think Caleb Plant can beat pretty much the majority of super middleweights
Yeah,
in that
and
division today.
he
All
held his
right.
own against Canelo and Benavidez. Like that's no small feat whatsoever. I mean,
Yes. So we go from one slick boxer to the people's slick boxer. I'm talking about Rolly Romero here.
oh my
I'm
god.
talking, I'm talking about Mr. Rolly, the former WBA junior welterweight champion, Mr. himself. Rolly Romero's back in action after losing to Pitbull Cruz back in March. He's facing Manuel Jaimes, who a lot of people don't know he also fights on the regional level. But this fight, I think, is a lot closer than
Oh
people
yeah.
think. Nate, give me your initial thoughts.
Yeah, I just after Rolly's performance against Pitbull Cruz and seeing how Pitbull Cruz was handled against Rayo, I have very much had my doubts about Rolly. I think it's just something where Manuel Jaime he's probably gonna, you know, it'll be something where they probably meet in the middle and just slug it out. And hopefully, if Jaimes can be defensively responsible, it's gonna be a tough fight for Rolly. I mean, it's set up for Rolly to win, but I mean, with his style and how he's looked of late, I don't know if I'd
Are you
favor him
hating?
against many.
Are you hating on Rolly Romero
After
right
ranking
now,
him
bro?
fourth in my 140-pound blind rankings, I very much am hating
Oh
on him.
my gosh!
Okay, I
No,
still can't believe he
no!
did
Oh
that
my
to me.
gosh! Hey, man.
Ugh, yeah.
Hey, don't hate the player, hit the game. But we talk about Rolly Romero, bro. This man right here, he has a lot to prove. Uh, you can arguably say he lost his last three fights. You can
Yeah.
arguably say that because that Barroso fight, he got gifted. Let's call it a spade a spade. He definitely got gifted that fight. Pitbull Cruz fight, he did not look good, and I think at the highest level, you're seeing him get a little exposed. That being
To say the
said,
least. Yeah.
that being said, he's not fighting a guy who's at the highest level yet. But Manuel Jaimes is a tough guy, a tough, gritty fighter. He has, when he pressures you, he has this pitbull like style. It's not completely like Pitbull Cruz
No.
because you can't replicate that. You can't replicate charging head first, swinging for the fences. But he charges head first with a high guard to kind of make you succumb to the pressure. He has
Hmm.
a very combat like style where he wants to just kind of just make it a real rough and dirty fight. He has heavy hands, real heavy hands, at least from what I've seen. Can counter really well, solid body puncher, which I think would be a very big key in this fight against Rolly, who, Rolly has I wouldn't say a solid Philly shell, but it's a Philly shell
It,
in and
it
of
is a
itself.
Philly show. It is.
I'm not saying it's a good
It's
one.
a
I'm
shell
saying
from Philly.
it's a shell from Philly. That's what I'm gonna say. But I think he was. I think because Rolly fights so squared up and so like kind of like herky jerky, he can really connect to the body a lot. I think too, he throws a lot of probing shots. So he throws a lot of pity
Mhm.
shots to set up with the shots that he can really sink into. And I think against Rolly, who really can't read punches that well for some reason, at the highest level, really can't read punches that well. That could be a big strength for Manuel Jaimes.
Hmm.
But I will tell you this right now. I think the only issue with Jaimes is that he's small. He's going to be small
Yeah.
compared to Rolly. And
Stare
Rolly
down, you
is
could see it.
exactly. And Rolly is athletic. He's very like we dog on his skills a lot. You dog on his skills a lot. I'll
What do
just say
you
that.
mean? What?
You dog on his skills. You can't even deny that.
I
But
can't.
we'll tell you what, he is a strong fighter. Throws with a
He's very
lot
strong.
throws with a lot of power. It's not God given power. I'll tell you that. It's not knockout power, but he throws hard.
Hmm.
And one thing about him is that he has like really. I've said it before. He's awkward, and that timing's really weird. Like it's just
Yeah.
I can't say it's awkward timing. It's just weird. Like when he throws, it just only works for him. The way he throws, the way he moves, it only
Yeah.
works for Rolly.
You wouldn't teach anyone to fight like Rolly.
Absolutely not. I would never. I would never look like I'm about to do a split while moving. That's how wide his feet are. That being
Right.
said, I think his athleticism is going to is going to give him the advantage in this fight. Not only that, he does do something really well, and it's throwing short shots. He throws a lot of short shots, and he does generate a decent amount of power in them. Barroso felt that actually a few times in their fight. Pitbull Cruz, not really much, but when Rolly is focused, he can put together a decent game plan. Um, that being said, it's kind of hard to pick in this. It's kind of hard to pick who can win in this fight just because we see that Rolly is not at world level, right?
Yeah. No,
But the
he's
real question now is what level is he at? His mouth says pay per view star, but where is his skill level at? I think we'll
uh,
find out in this fight this weekend.
yeah. It's just skill wise, he's definitely a lot to work on still, even though he's had a belt. Um, I don't know. I have my doubts. It might actually be a sneaky good fight actually on the pay per view. It's a good fight to open the pay per view.
Who do you think will win?
I I kind of want to go Jaimes by decision. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not
You
gonna
want to
lie.
know
I think.
something?
Mm.
I said the exact same thing.
Oh, really?
I
Wow.
said the
Okay.
exact same thing. I think Manuel Jaimes might do it because actually, when I was watching him, I was like, dude, I think the one
He's
thing
got
that's
good
gonna,
skill. Yeah.
I think the one thing that's gonna help him in this fight is that he can actually move really well. He can
Hmm.
really move well, going forward, backwards, cutting angles. It's not like it's not like world class, but it's enough to kind of
Yeah.
use Rolly. Like
You don't need the world class feet to out
no, and I
move
think too, it's
early.
just like him kind of probing. Probing is going to be the biggest thing for him. Like kind of setting up those shots is going to confuse the heck out of Rolly. I'll tell you that
Hmm.
right now. Rolly is going to look like a fish once he starts
Out of
doing that.
water.
Out of water. More like just a fish in general. But
Okay.
I think it's going to be a closer fight because I think Rolly does have a lot to prove.
Hmm.
But
He shows
again,
up to fight every time. You know.
yeah, I think, man, I think it's going to be something we're gonna really we're gonna have a big question answered is what level is Rolly at? Because we already know his mouth has gotten him all these opportunities.
Yeah.
But we go from one world champion or one former world champion to another former world champion because cool boy Stephen Fulton is making his featherweight debut against Carlos Castro. Cool boy Stephen Fulton fighting for the first time since dropping his belts to Naoya Inoue back in July of last year. And he's going up a division. I am excited.
Hmm.
I love Cool Boy Stephen Fulton. I'm wondering what version of him we're gonna get since he's coming off his first pro loss.
Yeah.
But I think when a fighter jumps up to another weight class, it's like a fresh start for them. I
Hmm.
always think that. I think it's a fresh start because don't nobody know your reputation there, and now like you're fighting a whole bunch of fresh new fighters. You have a whole bunch of nice matchups that you can make. It's interesting,
Yeah.
and he's not
Yeah.
fighting. He's fighting someone that's pretty tough. someone that's ranked in a few sanctioning bodies.
Yeah, I mean his boxing ability is really one of the best. I mean they were talking. I mean we're talking about him as like a pound for pound guy before he fought Inoue. He took a beating against Inoue. So how he recovers from that, like that's easily the biggest question mark heading into this fight. But if he can get a big win, I mean he already beat Angelo Leo once, so I mean he
Yeah.
could set himself up for a rematch against him or against any of the champions because he was so
Or
good at 122 pounds. He just ran into the buzzsaw that was the
dude,
monster. You know,
or Brandon Figueroa, a rematch
that'd be
there.
yeah rematch with him too.
But I would
That would
say
be
this. I would say, this fight is a contrast in styles. Stephen Fulton loves to use the ring. The man, I would say I've never seen someone run a marathon in the ring. He's the closest
he's
one.
pretty close. Yeah.
He's pretty close. The way that he moves around the ring, he's close. Him and Tevin Farmer, neck and neck in that finish line. While he uses the ring, Carlos Castro likes to fight inside the pocket. So it's
Mhm.
going to be a contrast in styles. It's going to be it's going to be a real question of can Castro really trap him in a corner on the ropes and get some offense off? Because Stan Fulton, slick, a slick boxer, but not only that, he's quick in the trade-offs. Quick when it comes to those exchanges, he can get off first.
Mhm.
And that's the big thing is, he has speed and quickness that is unlike other people. He just has the fast twitchies that
Yeah.
get you that connects a split second faster. Outside fighter, very selective with the shots, but very accurate. That's the
He makes him
biggest thing.
count.
Makes them count. Accuracy is crazy. He's actively defensive too. He's constantly moving, constantly giving you looks, like constantly giving you head looks, body looks, angle looks, constantly making you think what shot you need to throw with. And that right there overloads you and makes you
Mhm.
overthink and makes you question what shots to throw. And because of that, Stephen Fulton's gonna throw in his exchange. But that being said, Carlos Castro, tough guy, catches you at the end of his shots. Someone that I think you shouldn't take lightly. He's lost to only the best, I think. So I
Mhm.
think he's lost to Luis Neri. And I forget the other guy. I forget who it is. Brandon Figueroa. That's who it was. Brandon
Yeah.
Figueroa. So he's only lost to top guys in their divisions. So I think this is a tougher fight than people think. Nate, what is your prediction for this fight?
I'm gonna go Fulton by decision. I think he bounces back and shows that he is a world class fighter, and he sets himself up for a big fight next.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm going to go with cool boy Steph. I just think, you know, losing to Naoya in a way is not the biggest deal in the world. Everybody
Yeah.
loses to him. He's literally on a
Mhm.
white hot run. And, you know, featherweight is a fresh division. I still think with his skill set, he could arguably become the best at that division. With his skill set, with his timing, his defensive prowess, he has all the makings of a world champion at featherweight. This is his first real test, and I'm looking forward to see what it is. But to kick off the entire card, we have the man who lost to Jerome Boots in this last, but is coming back. The dangerous, the always dangerous Romain Villa. Nate, I'm gonna let you take this one away, just because besides the Duran fight, I haven't really seen a lot of Villa, so I
Yeah.
will let you take this away,
Yeah,
Nate.
I'll keep it short. I'll keep it sweet. I mean, Royman Villa just friggin' huge for 147 pounds. He is a big welterweight, and just and use his size. With his relentless pressure, he's always in your face. He's digging the body. He's doing a lot of volume too. Like his fight against Rashidi Ellis, like it was something where he was. It took him a while to get going, but once he got going, once Ellis started to slow down, you could see his physical strength and see that his volume take over. He dropped him twice, and that was what ended up getting him the majority decision. I mean, obviously against Boots, I mean, Boots is arguably one of the best fighters in the world. He just hasn't had the opposition to prove it. So that's could be a little misleading in how you view Villa. But I think you'll see him like return to form against Ricardo Rodriguez and get him out of there.
I
Probably
think
in the
it's
middle
going to
to late
be
round.
I think it's going to be a fifth round stoppage.
Yeah, somewhere around there. I think
I would
that's how
say
it
I would say
goes.
I would say prepare for this fight card. for a lot of stoppages. I would say a majority of
Yeah,
stoppages.
I
I'm not
think
gonna lie.
I hope so.
I mean, I hope
That'd
so.
be
What if
nice.
they all go into decision?
If they all go to decision,
We
I
would
will.
butcher this. This
Yeah,
predictions would have been butchered.
we would look like idiots. Even
Oh man.
yeah. It's
I
like-
think though, I think predictions went well. I think we had some
We agreed
very solid
on.
predictions.
Mhm.
Pretty much every except for Erslandi, right?
Yeah, but that one's like really like a 50-50 fight. It's
And
hard to.
and that's okay. And that's
Yeah,
okay. But
no, because I'll be
let's get
right.
to the shorts, man. Let's get to the shorts. Last week,
Schwartz.
last week,
No surprises this time, thank God.
no surprises because we're not talking about anything like last week. Nate didn't want to talk to me for the rest of the week after we did that,
I did it.
but we're here now. But since we're talking about Mexico versus Puerto Rico this weekend, why not go with that theme for our shorts? So we're ranking our top 3 Mexico versus Puerto Rico boxing match or boxing fights in the history of the sweet science. Nate, I'm gonna let you go first. We can go back and forth. So we'll
Okay,
start at
start
number
with 3.
3. Nate, go first.
Okay. So the list, it wasn't so much like best fights. I think it was also like the spectacle, like the build up and all that as well. So for that, with number 3, I went with Miguel Cotto versus Antonio Margarito too. It wasn't obviously their first fight was a great fight, but then the whole Plasters in Paris, Shane Mosley fight and all that. So this was a chance for Miguel Cotto to get his revenge at Madison Square Garden, which is basically his home arena, Puerto Rico. And yeah, Jesus Christ, English is hard. But yeah, Madison Square Garden was he made his home, it felt so and yeah, for him to get his revenge and stop Margarito and break the eye that Manny Pacquiao previously broke, and that was very, very fitting for him to win as he did. It was just a raucous environment. And yeah, Cotto got the revenge he deserved.
You know what's crazy?
Was
At
that number
number
3 for you?
3, I got Antonio Margarito versus Miguel Cotto 2. Dude, I was gonna put number 1 in there because that arguably is the better fight,
Yeah.
the more exciting
Mhm.
fight. But when you
Yeah.
talk about story, number 2 had everything to it.
Yeah.
It's coming. You're coming off the controversy. You're coming off Miguel Cotto's first ever professional loss, which was handed down by Antonio Margarito, and then it comes out that Margarito was using plaster. Maybe not in the Cotto fight, allegedly,
Yeah, allegedly.
but
Yeah.
he got caught cheating in his next fight against Sugar Shane Mosley. So, with that being said, I mean, it just put this bitter blood rivalry to a boiling point. And then, man, the energy in that crowd at MSG.
Yeah, they were out for blood.
Dude, they could have just stood there for 12 rounds. The chance would have been crazy.
Yeah.
And dude, the 24/7, not the 24/7,
the stair or the God, I know what you're talking about.
The Max Kellerman table.
Yeah.
Thing. Oh my gosh,
that was the greatest one.
That was the greatest one because Cotto came with the iPad showing the rip
the cut in the glove, the hand wraps.
Oh my goodness! I think just with the buildup itself, the fight was still good. I'm gonna say that right now. The fight was still good, and it had a satisfying conclusion. But just the whole buildup, the whole ensemble, the whole package on this rematch, it has to be at number 3. Nate, let's get to number 2.
Number 2, I went Felix Trinidad versus Fernando Vargas. One of the greatest fights you'll ever see. I believe they fought at junior middleweight and just back and forth. I mean, Trinidad dropped Vargas 2-3 times in the first round. I forget. But it looked like, Vargas was dead to rights. And then, he comes back, he drops Trinidad, and they just go back and forth, just an action-filled brawl. And eventually, Trinidad gets him out of there in the 12th round. But Vargas was super young in that fight, too. I forget how young he was. Just for him to be fighting at that level.
Early 20s.
Yeah, for him to be fighting at that level and to hold his own. That was a tremendous fight. One of the best fights you'll ever see.
Yeah, that I can't agree with you more. That fight was one of the best. And, what Felix Trinidad meant to Puerto Rico, especially in his prime, this is when the Puerto Rico versus Mexico rivalry was hot.
Yeah.
Red hot. And they were both undefeated and both dangerous power punchers. Like, people forget how hard.
Match made in heaven.
Yeah, people forget how hard Felix Trinidad hits. You know what I mean? Felix Trinidad, not a boxer, he's a killer.
Yeah.
Fernando Vargas, a dangerous dude too. Someone who just put on the pressure. Someone who was not afraid to be brash at a young age and reach for the stars. So I like that. I like that. At number 2 for me though, I have Salvador Sanchez
Number
versus
2?
Wilfredo Gomez, arguably the greatest Mexico versus Puerto Rico fight in history. I have it at number 2. It was the fight of the year it came out. I forget what year that fight
Oh,
happened,
not
but
good.
dude, just nonstop, nonstop
Mhm.
action for as long as the fight, lasted. Again, Salvador Sanchez, man, the rest in peace. He
Mhm.
really they put on a clinic for 8 rounds. I'll tell you that. And
Yeah.
the finishing sequence, some of the nastiest I've ever seen. So I
Yeah.
had to put that at number 2. Um, yeah, like I know that's a hot
Great.
take. It's a
Yeah.
hot take,
I'm
but
wondering what you have ahead of it.
I, you'll find out in a second. But it is
Yeah.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah. Well, for me, that was number 1. I mean,
Oh,
just friggin' the build up. I mean, one of easily the greatest fight in the rivalry. Sanchez almost got Gomez out in the first round, then Gomez, storms back and they go back and forth. I
dude,
mean, and then Sanchez eventually stops him in the 8th round.
and
I
this
mean,
was and
Sanchez
the,
was so good.
dude, and this was a time where you know people weren't afraid. The best weren't afraid to fight the
The best
best.
fought the best.
So literally, they were fighting peak for peak, so prime for
Mhm.
prime. And so you saw that. You saw the way they were fighting. Their confidence
Super
was
high
an all time
level
high,
too.
super high level, all time high confidence. So when they were getting rocked, they were literally like nothing's gonna stop them. They had the killer
No,
instinct.
Iron Will, both of
Iron
them.
Will, dude, it was dude. I honestly, I wish I was alive when that fight went
Yeah,
live. Like those were one of those
that
fights
was.
where it's like I wish I was alive. And you know what? Not trying to get off topic, but I wish we would have seen more of Salvador Sanchez.
Yeah,
And
dude, he was
not
supremely skilled.
obviously not us because we weren't born at the time, but I wish
Yeah,
the boxing world would have seen more.
yeah. I mean,
So
you
you
could
had that at
be.
number one, and you had that at number one, and it's rightfully so because arguably it's the greatest Mexico versus Puerto Rico fight of all time. But I have Felix Trinidad versus Fernando Vargas
Okay,
at number
all right.
one. Reason being is because this is a fight I actually was able to watch
Mhm.
as a little kid. You know what I mean? I think it happened in 2000 or 2001.
Let's see.
Um, I'm pretty sure 2001. Either way, I was still born at the time.
Yeah,
But
you were on Earth.
I was I was on Earth. But I think the biggest thing is, we talk about buildups. Fernando Vargas
Mhm.
was talking a lot of trash in
Oh
the
yeah,
build up to this fight. Fernando Vargas being Fernando Vargas pretty much.
yeah.
And Felix Trinidad is he's a very humble guy. Like he was a very soft spoken
Yeah,
guy,
quiet.
killer in the ring. But in the build up to this fight, he was out for blood. And
Mhm.
first round, dude, first round, one of the most shocking scenes, like one of the most shocking scenes you'll ever see. Like Fernando Vargas, I think he did get dropped 3 times. It was either the first round or the last round where Fernando Vargas got dropped 3 times.
Yeah,
He
I
got
think I.
dropped. He got dropped multiple times, more than once. And
Mhm.
then throughout the next 10 rounds, you see it's Fernando Vargas trying to catch up on the cards, and the crazy thing is he did it. He was only
Yeah,
I think 1 or 2 points behind going into the last round. That
yeah.
is insane. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? You know
Especially after getting
how
dropped many times.
that's what I'm saying. You know how well you have to be boxing. Yeah,
Mhm.
he dropped. I mean, he dropped Trinidad too, but you know how well you have to be boxing to close that gap. That is insane. And then just the climax of it with Trinidad dropping Fernando Vargas multiple times. I think it culminated in one of the greatest fights in boxing history, not just Puerto Rico versus Mexico, just one of the greatest fights in boxing history. So for that, Felix Trinidad Jr. versus Fernando Vargas has to be my number one for Mexico versus Puerto Rico.
Fair enough. Hopefully, we get something like that this Saturday, but I'm not getting
Oh
hopes.
man,
If there can be like a fraction of this, I would say it's a
I'll tell
60.
you what. This right here, this is a very big stretch for Mexico versus Puerto Rico. All right, I'm gonna tell you that right now. That is a stretch, but we're gonna label it as that. So we're gonna put it to that standard. Nate, any final thoughts before we close out the show?
No, it's just hopefully Berlanga can show us something we've never seen in his career. That's what's gonna have to be. There's a just a it's a level there's a level to his game we haven't seen him get to yet, and if he can get to it, it can be a really good fight. And hopefully that's what we get. But I'm not getting my hopes up. As would be nice if this was Canelo fighting someone like David Benavidez, who's proven to be on that level. But alas,
Yeah.
here we are.
And listen, that fight is history. We're looking forward to this Saturday. I think I think not David, Edgar Berlanga is going to have to do everything in his power. He I hope he comes in with the best training camp and everything because he's going to have to really shock the world and show us something if he wants to beat the face of boxing. But that is all the time we have today. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe our YouTube channel. Follow us at the Split Decision on Instagram. Follow my boy Nate at Nate Marrero on Instagram. Follow him. Where can they find you on Twitter? Because you're Twitter famous, bro.
That is my well. Okay,
You
I
didn't hear me. That's what I
wouldn't
said. You
quite go
didn't.
that
You,
far.
you didn't hear
Yeah,
me.
no,
That's what I said.
that's my X account right there. Nate underscore Murrow. Right,
Yeah.
right there.
Follow him. Follow him. But listen, man, great show. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Alyas Blanco. He's Nate, and we are out.